On 9/11, I was 17 years old. I was a freshman at Wellesley College, and I remember turning in an Intro to Islamic Civilization paper at the time that morning and seeing faculty members watching something on television. It was the second tower being hit. And I remember thinking it was a movie, and they were all intently watching a movie. And I kept going, and it wasn't until I got to my dorm and I saw friends frantically trying to call their families on their phones, and they weren't able to get through because the lines were busy and they were down, it was overloaded. And then I realized something drastic had happened. And I realized at that point that it was a terrorist attack. And later that day, my mom had called me and she said that I should take off the headscarf. We're from Boston, and where the flights had been hijacked, and my family's Muslim, and I was more visibly Muslim because I had started wearing the headscarf just recently and started practicing Islam. So she was worried that something would happen to me, and didn't. I remember not wanting to take off my headscarf, and being okay with that risk. I think we were really, really worried about people who might have been hurt in the attacks. We were worried about people we knew in New York, other people in Boston who might have been on those flights. So we were calling around frantically as well. And I remember there was one close family contact who was a young woman who was in her late teens, and she sold flowers at the World Trade Center with her father. And we were worried that something had happened to her, but thankfully, like she wasn't at work that day. She was in fact in Boston, and they were okay. Another family wasn't so fortunate. There was in one of our mosque communities a woman who her name was Rama Saleh, and her husband were both on American Airlines Flight 11. They were flying to a wedding in Los Angeles, and we know what happened to that flight. It was not something that was easy to deal with. We didn't know them personally, but it still affected us because it was still so local. We I remember going to the mosque that Friday and just giving condolences to the cousins of the family, and it all felt very surreal because it didn't seem like it didn't seem real in many ways, but it was real. I think for a lot of Americans, they watch 9/11 on television, or didn't really. I mean, we were all horrified as Americans, and we didn't really know how to process it. But even having known people who were affected by it, it's still, even years from now, it's still hard to sort of wrap my mind around it. I do know that there was a lot of warmth and outpouring of community after the attacks, and there was a lot of solidarity between people. I remember people who were not Muslim coming out and guarding the mosque on Friday prayers to make sure nothing, there were no retaliatory attacks, and that was really, really touching.